Martin.
First, if I could just say how extraordinary good it was to me to have this conversation open up, you know, so that the reality of the Turkish army position and the difference between the Turkish army view and that of the government, which all other conferences I've attended have always tried to say that it was the same, the government and the army. I mean, it clearly is not. And I would like to bring up just a couple of points. I mean, when I was in Cyprus in '64, it has not generally been remarked in the histories that I read. The Turkish contingent was placed under British command I think on the 28th of December. And on the 29th of December, they refused to obey British command and removed themselves unilaterally, without the Turkish government's agreement, as far as I know, from that command, and said that they would no longer accept the orders from General Young. The second is that at the time of the Annan Plan, as far as one knew, there were 35,000 troops, Turkish troops in Cyprus. I mean, that number, as I understand it, was increased to almost 50,000 troops, again, without this situation being very generally publicised, which seemed to me just like very much like the Turkish army saying to the international community, we are a player in this game, and you have to do a deal with us rather than just thinking you can do it with Mr. Erdogan. I appreciate the delicacy at the present time between Erdogan and the army, but I hope there's something. I was encouraged by what you said, that hopefully the thing will move into the route of democratic control.
Don't take me as having said that. I didn't say that. I merely pointed out there was a possibility of it happening, and I hope it happens, but it does not. It is not at all certain that that is what will happen. I mean, we're talking about a very open-ended crisis, which could go in any number of ways, and I think that anybody who predicted, I mean, if you leave here saying that I have given you an optimistic message regarding Turkey, well, no, please don't take that message. Take the message that there could be ways in which the crisis could be handled, or there could even be ways in which the crisis does not break out, but there could be ways that it could go in an extremely nasty direction. So it's all very open indeed. I think what you said is very much to the point, Martin. The whole point of the situation in 1963 was that Turkey was there qua Turkey. What I am saying is that Turkey must be there as part of a European Union structure. That is a huge difference. The command structure makes all the difference in the world.
Just the final point, I mean, just in terms of your urging of other people, I mean, I hope that would include the supposition that the possible move, which I think is a very interesting idea to think about, of the resident Greek and Turkish troops into the bases, that would be seen as something very temporary, and temporary as far as the SPAs go as well. I mean, exactly. I simply do not see why we should have SPAs existing in this day and age, in another sovereign EU state. So, I mean, but in terms of it being a temporary process in which one goes, I mean, it seems entirely sensible.
Other questions? Or has Costa said everything?
No, I haven't.
Can you introduce yourself?
My name is Monica. Monica, I wanted to ask how much would the UK be willing to pursue and take the initiatives to pursue what you have suggested?
I'm not the person to ask on that because I'm not a member of the UK government. But what I understand is two things. First, that the UK government is very concerned. And second, that it has the tendency to say that there's a constitutional crisis in Turkey, let's not do anything. But the reason that I'm here this evening is to say that precisely because there is a constitutional crisis in Turkey, something needs to be done. Exactly how it should be done, of course, one have to play it by ear depending on how the constitutional crisis develops. But something has to be done, because if the constitutional crisis actually takes place, and as I say, the Constitutional Court might just avoid it. It might say, we find the AKP, but we don't dissolve it, and we don't ban the political figures. Unless that happens, then the prospects for Turkey next year in a European Union situation are very poor. The reason they are very poor are in part obvious, are in all the papers, because it would be effectively a constitutional court which is not even made up of lawyers. not even made up of lawyers, political appointees, saying to the voters, you cannot have your way, you cannot have the government you voted for. And for the reason that I added, which has not come out yet, that it would be saying to one part of the country, probably, that none of the parties that you voted for are legal. And this is a large part of the country. We're talking about lots of millions of people. This would not sit well in any European Union member. It would be considered beyond the pale. It would therefore put the consideration of the Turkish accession process under the worst possible light. And in these circumstances, very dramatic moves have to be made by Turkey to change the situation. And I don't know whether that will be possible. All I'm saying is that Britain is, of all the foreign countries in the world, far more than the United States, the country that can do something. And let me say that public opinion polls in Turkey still show that more people want European Union accession than do not want it. But public opinion polls in Turkey show that 70% of the population consider the United States an enemy country. And that is in part in reply to Chris Price. The United States, of course, is a very important country in the world and could have a dramatic revival in its influence when a new administration comes in January. But as of now, its influence on Turkey is lower than it's ever been in my lifetime.
Is there a question here?
If we've got time. Peter Vlahos, lecturer in business at the University of Greenwich, but if I could pose my comments and questions wearing my hat as a member of the board of directors of the National Secular Society, which since 1866 has been promoting secular values in the UK and increasingly being called upon to provide guidance and advice to EU bodies on the question of secularism across the EU. You mentioned in passing early in the talk, in your talk, Sharia law in Western Thrace, questions there, secular prejudice, which I would acknowledge as well. I thought if you could say a little bit more about that. My thinking on this probably wouldn't be surprising, is that one of the gifts that we could collectively give to a new Cyprus is to ensure, whatever political form that entity takes, that it would be a secularist state, because until now, one problem that hasn't become prevalent, at least in the media, is the religious division. It's portrayed as a Greek Cypriot, Turkish Cypriot, Greece, Turkey problem. But fortunately, if we can call it a fortunate item on the agenda, a fortunate item that's not on the agenda, it's not religious division. Maybe because that division is so obvious. I'm not a Cypriot, but perhaps that division is so obvious it doesn't need saying. But I think there is an open door there, and I would be alarmed, as I think my organization would be alarmed, if that door was to be shut, because it does allow us to have these kind of forums, which, although we don't call them secular forums, they're very much secular. My question is this: in light of what I would like to see in terms of a secular Cyprus, and in support of certainly Turkey's ascension to the EU, is how we're going to bridge this divide, these gaps within the Turkish military, which on the one hand, you've quite rightly have said, have a nationalistic interest in Cyprus and the idea of unity and sort of that role, but also historically, from what my Turkish colleagues have said at the university, that the army in Turkey has been the protector of secularist values against Islamic tendencies. And for me, as a supporter of Turkey's joining the EU, but at the same time not wanting to see increasing divisions in Cyprus, how do you see that issue playing out?